welcome y'all to Backwoods Obscura, a podcast dedicated to the lore, legends, and myths surrounding the creatures that may lurk in your backyard. My name's Hewitt.
I'm Chris.
Hey, Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. You know, I think we've talked about this before. It's like we're both in school, or I'm in school.
Yeah, my classes start back up Tuesday.
Yeah, mine have started back up, and mine have been started up about 2 weeks now, and it's been really good. I had like 3 exams back to back. That's cool. But I aced them.
Dope.
Yeah. It's kind of weird, like, me as someone that, like, hasn't done school in such a long time. And this isn't, like, formal. This is all online. I think yours is all online.
Yeah, mine was all online, too.
Like, it's such a different experience because I kind of just work in my own time and read and just listen to the lectures in my own time. And then I just look over the contents of, like, the labs and everything. But it's been going good. It's weird to me how much I already knew because, by the way, I'm in IT, going into IT tech. So
he's going from my teeth to IT.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I already did a little bit of IT at my job because they hired me specifically because I had experience with computers and I knew computers, and I was the one that helped set up the network. With like zero experience setting up a network. I just, looked it up, did all the steps.
Thank you, YouTube.
Yeah, thank you, YouTube. I mean, that's a lot of it. But no, it's been good. Yeah, how's school been going for you?
Like I said, classes start back next week. I've got 2 professors that I've had before, one of which was the one that was like, I think I mentioned it in the podcast, was like oddly supportive. Like, to where I didn't trust the situation anymore.
You're like, no.
You're being too nice. This is bullshit. Something's wrong.
Something's wrong here. Something's wrong.
And then Dr. Hester that I work with at my school for social emotional learning is going to be doing my multicultural educational experience class.
So is that like...
It's to understand what it means to teach in a classroom with multiple different ethnic groups, multiple different socioeconomic groups, etc. As some people would try to say, it would be the DEI class, but it's no.
I can't believe this. You're taking a course in woke studies.
I fucking hate the word woke because it's been around since the 30s, and people are acting like it's new.
Well, I mean, it's been appropriated is what happened.
It did. But the big thing here is that, honestly, they talked about letting me exempt that class because I've taught in a low income majority minority school my entire career. But it's not bad to learn because it's teaching you to be culturally sensitive and be culturally aware because
in a more broad spectrum.
Broad spectrum.
You're in a minority, like you're in a minority school district right now, but like it might broaden your horizons to like other types.
Well, no, what it is that anyone that has lived predominantly in one culture or one subculture does need to probably take a class to be aware so you're not inadvertently a jerk. Because I got coworkers that don't know how to deal with the Hispanic students we have coming into the school now. Because my school's always been a historically black high school,
right? And
now we're getting a notable Hispanic population. They're like, I don't understand this. I'm like, talk to the kids.
Or if anybody that's like, I could see people having issues with like Indian, South Asian.
That would be more of the other high school on the other side, the one we went to.
Yeah, and then you see a lot of people that are that mix up things like Islam and Sikh and
exactly. So I mean, I don't think it's a problem to have it. I think that especially in a country as big as ours, that having multicultural awareness is good. And also, I could be wrong about what this course is actually about because I took a budgeting class. And we didn't talk about money till my final project. Like the professor never talked about money in anything, the assignments. The book didn't talk about money in any of the chapters I read. And then I had to develop a budget for the school that was in line with the school's motto
fun.
and message with the school message. So, yeah, that's that. Work has been special this week. I took kids on a field trip to New Orleans.
How'd that go?
That was okay. We spent almost as much time in the food court as we did the small museum we went to.
I mean, makes sense. If you're going to New Orleans, you're at least stopping by one of the good food places.
No, we literally stopped at the Riverwalk.
Okay, Riverwalk is not like the
Riverwalk food court because I could get my kids something they could all eat because one kid that was on there can't have shellfish, another kid was allergic to peanut oil.
Right.
So,
kids had.
Well, I mean, it's allergies, but also, as much as I love my kids, I had one of them tell me that they've never actually left the Booker T neighborhood where my school is. So if I tried to introduce him to a new food on a trip and he did not have an option to get a hamburger, he would have lost his shit. I love that kid to death, and I will not say his name, but he would lose his shit if he could not get just like what he want. Like,
some kids are finicky like that. Though,
like
right?
The seafood place at the Riverwalk didn't have catfish. It was all shellfish and Gulf caught.
Well, that makes sense.
So I mean, like, you're sitting here like like they'd say, well, the fish we have changes every day. Well, what do you mean the fish changes every day? Well, some days we have snappers, some days we have drums, some days we have
like some grouper or something.
Like whatever is brought, we buy from the fish market is the fish of the day. That's why we have a chalkboard, not a full menu. And he's like, yeah, but I just want some catfish. Well, we don't have any catfish.
Catfish, they're like freshwater fish. So
and there's a lot of freshwater around New Orleans, but the big thing here was the Riverwalk Mall is not like the big bougie mall.
Right.
It is the touristy mall. So everything there was niche and kitschy. And this restaurant's whole thing was fresh caught Gulf seafood, which where we live is a rarity. Like, what the hell's a drum? I'm like, one, drum's kind of a trash fish, but drum's also good if you cook it right. It's just down here they have drum. People that live along the Gulf Coast will get drum as much as you would get catfish where we live.
I would say one caveat is that we do have a fish market here that you can buy. It's not like fresh caught the next day, but they have a direct line to fishermen down south, which that is the one good thing about having like living in Louisiana is like, even if you're in North Louisiana, you probably can find someone that has like a direct line down south to get like fresh or quality seafood.
So, and they love the food court. The museum was almost a bust because it was a walking tour that was like, it said it was a 2-story museum. The room was 2 stories, but there was not a second floor. It was just, open.
Yeah.
But kids had fun. Had a couple of them try to be jerks on the way home, but it's kids. We were gone we did it in one day. We were there and back, and I'm glad we didn't stay because there's one of them like, yeah, you need to stop flirting with everybody.
It's like, you need to stop.
Like, I'm right here. And it was one of my kids in my class, and he's like, oh, but it's not my fault if they think I'm good. I'm like, no, it's not. But Mr. Hall's up here and he'll be real bad if you keep acting like you good. And he's like, you're smiling, but it still seems like a threat.
Yeah.
I've taught you every year you've been here, man. Oh, yeah. But so, yeah, they had a great time.
That's good.
I am not doing another field trip for a very long time.
You're just like, I'm done.
Well, no, there's administration does not want kids to go on field trips right now because there's a money crunch in the district. Like, we're already being told there's probably going to be downsizing.
Oh, that's cool. That's a fun word.
And the district doesn't want to let buses go out too far because of gas prices. It's like, it's like you're afraid gas prices are about to go up again.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, let's get off that.
We were talking about school, and it's kind of a segue into what I'm about to talk about. Now, you probably heard of this, but don't get too ahead of me because I think you might know a little bit about this. How much have you heard about the Smiley face killers?
None.
Really?
I know that it is a urban legend and possibly real, and that their name describes with the token they left behind.
Yeah.
But I have not looked into it because, again, it falls kind of into the true crime.
Yeah, it does. This does fall into true crime. Like, this is probably, aside from the Axeman, probably the most true crimey one we're going to be doing thus far. So the Smiley Face Killer is a theory, or Smiley Face Killers, rather, is a theory that alleges multiple murders across the U.S. since the late 90s are connected and conducted by multiple people, and potentially a gang. The theory was proposed by former NYC detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, with the collaboration from criminal justice professor Dr. Lee Gilbertson. So, what is the theory? So what most people know is like it's some killer or killers that leaves a smiley face where they've killed a victim. What the theory is as follows is there have been 45 seemingly unconnected murders since the 90s that have suspiciously similar circumstances. I really made a tongue twister there.
Similarly sinister.
Yeah, suspiciously similar circumstances. Is what I wrote. I'm like,
you should have thrown sinister in there.
Suspiciously sinister, similar circumstances. Oh my god, that hurt. All victims were found near water, usually under a bridge or in a drainage ditch. And when I say drainage ditch, I don't just mean like, you know, the ditch in your front yard. I mean,
talking about the canals that'll run back that everything drains
like drainage,
to.
canals.
Well, I mean, like, well, you never hung out with me when I was a kid, or when we were kids. I grew up on Orleans. Like the first couple years, my family was back in Monroe, and between Orleans and Eason, I think it's Eason, there is a like 8-foot deep drainage ditch that goes like there's a storm drain for most of that neighborhood. And I remember being a kid and you would just hop that and play back there.
I think I remember hearing about that because we're getting into a tangent about like local stuff, but there's, you know, the maze. Mm-hmm. There's that drainage canal, which it's called the maze because it's it drains gray water into the river.
And it has it has a bunch of concrete breaks in it to make sure it's not just pouring out. Also near my old house on Pope, which I know you came by that one when Nate was hanging out with me.
Yeah.
There was that concrete drainage ditch that ran the entire length of Beloit that was right next to my house.
Yeah. I remember like those two, like the maze, and then I think the place you were talking about, and then there was another one. I think it was the one on Pope. People would talk about all the time because it was like places you could go that were out of the way, quote unquote.
Well, I mean, as bad as it sounds, we were ditch kids.
Yeah.
Like, we're from the South. Your parents stuck you outside for a hot minute back in the day, and you're told don't go in the ditch, but
you go in the ditch.
You go in the ditch, and then you might even go further into certain parts, like because they didn't have grates over part of the sewer pipe. So if it was big enough for you to explore.
I remember when the maze now has like
the big grate.
Like at one point it didn't have the grate.
You could go, oh God, you could walk up into the pump house that way. I forgot that.
Yeah. You could actually still walk up into the pump house on the other side, but that's just like, I think it's just like a drainage, not a straight.
Right. And I think the reason that kind of this tangent here, which the reason we're going with this one, reminiscing about childhood and like possibly things that were not okay for us to do, but this is how bodies were found, right? Like kids just go and play in this, and next thing you know.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like here.
Thank God we didn't have that. Think about the trauma.
Actually, with the maze, there was like talks that they found bodies there and that it'll kill you immediately or something like that. I don't think any of that was actually true.
Now, I could understand someone drowning in the maze if like you decided to be dumb and jump in there when the pump house is pumping out all the storm drains.
Yeah.
Because, little bit of an odd fact. The drainage ditch that ran down by our old high school near where you lived.
Yeah.
That's a bayou, or it used to be a bayou. And the course, we drained the whole thing when we turned it into drainage ditches because it used to drain out where the maze is. Like it used to run down 10th Street.
So they literally just agricultured it.
They flipped it, and now it's a massive storm drain. It's still, if you go on Google Maps, it still has it listed as a bayou.
Huh.
And that bayou eventually makes it over by my school that I teach at.
It's crazy to think about, like how much irrigation has been Like
45% of our state is waterway.
Mm.
Over 60% of our state is either waterway or right next to it.
Yeah. So all CODs in these cases are drowning. Are most. They say every case is drowning, but we're going to get into that. The killer or killers target white, usually college-aged men. So we're getting into the segue here. Usually the men are athletic, good-looking, and affluent.
Somebody had a type.
Somebody had a type. At every crime scene, as you said, there is a smiley face graffiti somewhere. While most of the deaths were listed as accidental, Gannon and Duarte believe the cases have many similarities that point to Gannon and Duarte, the two detectives.
Okay, I missed you saying their names earlier, but I hear
Yeah.
Gannon.
Yeah, his name is Kevin Gannon.
All I'm imagining is a Gerudo coming out like, now I see Ganondorf walking out in a trench coat.
Detective Ganondorf. Here to capture the
He does the
face.
oh, I hit the microphone, sorry. He does the weird little dance coming in, and then he goes, "There's been a murder.
There's been a murder. And I know the culprit." And he holds up a picture of Link. It's like, sir, you can't just keep blaming Link for everything.
Oh God, now
He's going to be guilty eventually.
buddy comedy of him and Zenigata going after Link and Lupin.
Oh God. Gannon and Duarte believe the cases have many similarities that point to an organized group of killers. They believe the murders started in 1997 with the death of Patrick McNeil in New York City.
Okay, yeah, I have heard of this case. This one, the first one.
Yeah, so he was a 21-year-old Fordham University College senior who was last seen, I forget what the bar was called. It was a Manhattan bar. He was out drinking with friends, and he went missing. And he went missing for nearly 2 months before they found his body in the East River. Now, here's the thing. Like, I did say, like, they do say, like, the urban legend is that they're all drowned, but he was likely not drowned. Because as we can see from the released autopsy and report, 11 years later, cool cops... Yeah, okay, 1 second, I'm going to go on a tangent. Because he disappears, they find his body, they ruled it an accidental drowning. They didn't release any of the autopsy reports, didn't release anything, they just kind of wrote it off.
Until like
11 years later.
Until like 2008, 2009.
Yeah, they didn't give the family any information on his death until 11 years later.
What PD was this again?
New York.
That 100% like
that tracks.
Why are you mad? This is just this is expected.
Yeah, it's like they have a fucking submarine, but you know, when it comes to your common death, they're just like, yeah, whatever, it's fucking drowning. Anyway,
then they go snort coke, do weed out in the submarine in the Hudson River.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Don't come at us, New York Police Department.
Fuck you, New York PD. I'm from Louisiana. I deal with the New Orleans PD and my local constabulary. I'm not worried about New York.
So the report showed findings that would be contradicting the police's, like their conclusions, which is bruises and mark that indicate binding. This is why I'm always like, okay, here's a tangent I'm going to do with true crime. 90% of true crime is just like police incompetence. Like the reason,
yes, it is 100%.
Like who is it? Not Bundy. Who was it?
No, Ted Bundy.
Dahmer.
Ted Bundy, Dahmer, and John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah, all of it. There were so many times where it was like very obvious they killed someone, and then the police are like, "Oh well."
go listen to, and that's why we drink. If you want some of the best rants about police incompetence, because Christine, the second half of every show, she does true crime, and just the amount of times, like when you like hindsight's 20/20. You know what I mean? Like now we're looking at going, how did you dumb mothers?
I mean, hindsight is 20/20. But when
current sight should have been too.
Yeah, current like especially when you hear like the stories surrounding like Dahmer, you're like, this can't be real. These people anyway. I'm gonna go on like an ACAB rant here. fucking. But yeah,
As long as you don't talk about like the son of Sam or the Zodiac in the future, dude. Like if you talk about those, I'm like, I'm just gonna go walk away for about 15 minutes as you yell at your microphone about how did you not see this.
I mean, half the reason why I don't want to do true crime is not just because it's exploitative and all of that, but it's just half of it is just like detectives are just either stupid or they just are lazy and they miss very obvious cue, or their prejudice in the case of Dahmer gets in the way of them actually being like doing the thing they're supposed to be doing, which is protecting and serving. But anyway, so bruises. He was found face up. Now, with drowning victims, usually they're face down.
I mean, he'd been gone for how long again at this point?
Almost 2 months.
So, I mean, if his body had been out there that long, it might have gotten flipped around.
Here's the thing, though. Decomposition and insect activity not only showed that he died recently, more recently than 2 months, that he was not killed in water. There was like a certain type of larva that was on the body that wouldn't have been laid in a cold, wet environment. It would have been in a dry, humid, or dry, warm environment.
Yeah, so can I pose something here?
What's that?
Old boy had gotten involved with some folks for some fun times that then eventually turned into not fun times, because this is how my brain's been ruined by the internet and everything else, and our TikTok for the last 3 weeks as it slowly dies.
Let's just go to Red Note.
No, I'm not doing that.
You would have to learn Mandarin.
No, I'm not doing that. But no, it's one of those, like, the internet has ruined me. It's like he had bruising on his wrist, like he had been bound.
Okay.
Kinky. And then,
I mean, there are a lot of like,
but I don't want to like make it.
crime.
I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying, oh, look at this, as that he was a victim of something like. No, like he was probably kidnapped, held, tortured.
Yeah.
And then when he died, they dumped his body. But I'm sorry, every time I hear, and it looked like their wrists were bound, I'm like, ooh, somebody had a fun weekend and it went wrong.
Yeah. I don't know what to say to this.
I mean, if you told him that like the safe word was sycamore and he couldn't say it right, maybe that's what happened. I hate to say it that way, but
I feel bad because like it sounds like Patrick's family was like legitimately frustrated with the police.
Well, they didn't release information, and they like kick the it's like the joke in TV shows, kick the body and dead. That's what the coroner says. He's dead. Cause of death, dead.
So even now, it went from accidental drowning to undetermined. Like they're not saying it's homicide. I think it would be a cold case at this point.
Yeah, it's like a 30-year-old case at this point now.
But a year later, in 1998, they did find a body in the same spot. And from there, the duo started investigating what would be 45 deaths in around 10 states. The theory has gained a lot of popularity, as well as it has gained a lot of popularity with other investigators and with the general public. And in 2009, a true crime docuseries called Smiley Face Killers: The Hunt for Justice aired on NBC's Oxygen, which features Gannon and Duarte and Gilbertson, as well as other investigators. As they go through each episode, each of the 6 episodes focuses on a different supposed victim of the Smiley Face Killers. Now, I didn't watch any of the series, but I believe you can just look it up, and I'm pretty sure it's like you can watch it essentially for free. It might be on Peacock, which I think is free with ads. It has gained a lot of attention in true crime circles as kind of like a fixture for like different like mega theories on
mega theories.
Well, it's gained fixtures in true crime circles as like a big
Hubbaloo.
Yeah. And it's even spawned some movies, like specifically the 2020 film Smiley Face Killers. Wow, what a original name. But a huge theory of gang of killers that killed over 40 people over the course of decades is an intriguing story. And a lot of seemingly well-respected people are in on the theory. Like, they believe it, or they've helped investigate it. So, this means it might have some validity, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just going to say this. It's the Illuminati.
Well, for me, at least, as far as the FBI and the Center for Homicide Research is concerned, as well as multiple police departments that have investigated these deaths, it's not a real thing. So, before we get into the Center for Homicides Research, who did a whole fucking paper called "Drowning the Smiley Face Killer's Theory," which
that actually sounds like a better movie title.
Yeah, like, they were just like, no, fuck this theory.
Okay, no, that sounds like an isekai. That time I reincarnated as someone who was drowning the theory of the smiley face killers.
Oh, God. But, so before we get into it, I already had some problems with this. So, my main problem is, like, okay, so 45 deaths over 10 states since 1997. And, you know, in my rough estimation, that's about 2 deaths a year, all spread out over a large chunk of the U.S., usually the northeastern chunk or the Midwest. So it's like the colonial states all the way to, like, Minnesota.
The old industrial centers.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm talking about on average here, but my skeptic sense went off immediately because when you look at, like, other just your run-of-the-mill or your most prolific serial killers, like we were talking about Bundy and Dahmer and all them, they operated in an earlier time when there wasn't as much tech to catch people, but they would be killing people, like, they killed like upwards of 10 people in a year. And for the Smiley Face Killers, as an organized group that's apparently on the dark web, and, like, of course, like, the dark web is already like some urban. There's like a lot of mystique around it.
There's like 2 websites that we used to go to as kids that are technically on the dark web now because they're not gone. Their URL still exists. It's just it won't pop up in a Google search. Like, that's all the dark web is anything that is pop up in a Google search. Yeah. But the problem now, before anybody thinks I'm trying to not say that anything nefarious happens on there, it does, because it's the back alley of the internet. It's where nobody looks. So if you're going to do something sus,
I mean, but also since like 2000, at least 2010, it's been filled with honeypots. Like, so, like, when people talk about, like, I'm sorry, I keep going on tangents here. When people talk about, like the scariness of the dark web and, like, bad shit happens there, the thing is, law enforcement know bad shit happens there, so they try and get people to get shit, which means it's shadow enforced. Not by, like, you know, like how the clear web is, but it's enforced in a different way. So maybe you can find sites that are like, you know, ooh, the bad sites. You're not going to find red rooms. Red rooms do not exist. But you could find, you know, sites where you can find drugs or illicit material or anything like that. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to have, like, an FBI.
I mean, also, like, the thing most people don't realize about the internet is nodes.
Yeah.
Like, we have one here in our town for, God, what did CenturyLink become? Lumen. Lumen has a node here. And we had a friend, remember Will?
Yeah.
Will works in a node in Colorado now for Lumen. And his job is to watch for any red flags and to backdoor observe what those red flags are. So Will has seen some of the most heinous shit on the internet. Like, I remember, okay, future Chris might edit this out. I remember Will sending me Lemon Party because he got that. And I was on a computer at the university at work at that time.
Okay. Lemon Party is one of those ones. It's like Meat Spin or Goatsy. Or back in the, oh my god!
No, don't start going back into the Wild West of the internet. No kids will understand this. If they were born without a 1 in front of the year, they wouldn't understand some of the wild shit that the late '90s, early 00s internet was. But
so we have over 2 decades of apparent smiley face killers that were apparently. We have like this network of killers, but they're only really they're only really active on average like twice a year. Now, that's not really how serial killers work. They're usually active. They have like a huge active period, and then they stop for a while, and then another active period. But if you're talking about like a coordinated group that apparently is like motivated by spite, because one of the Gannon theories is that like they're motivated because young white affluent men that are good looking, that they're just jealous of them. That's a very low motivation for like organized group.
That's a real, like, that sounds like a bunch of betas.
Or like a bunch of incels that are like, we gotta kill the chats. But this is like long before that mentality really got a hold.
And don't think that we're seriously going on that, anybody that's listening. We're making fun of that whole concept because be who you are, you're all beautiful.
And there's no real timeline. Apparently they're still quote killing today. Quote. But again, we're talking about very, like, when you look at the scope of it, 45 people, sucks that 45 people died, don't get me wrong, but 45 people over 2 decades in over 10 states, that it seems like a lot to draw conclusions, especially like
if this was a gang and this is like you had to kill someone for initiation, that's an extremely low recruitment rate.
Yeah. And also, like, you would see that concentrated in like a city or like a state, not 10 states, not like the entire Midwest or like northeastern United States. Now, the Center for Homicide Research, in their study drowning the smiley face killer theory, they said, this is what they said: all bodies were found in or near water. And the reason why that is relevant is because scenes where a body is found is often not the murder scene in this scenario. So what happens is usually someone is dumped. They dump a body into a body of water. That body will be in that water, float with the current, and
not be near where they...
Yeah.
It makes it extremely hard to identify where the body was. Okay, traditionally in the past, especially like if you go back before this century, if you go back to the long ago of the VHS track that we grew up with, the 1900s or even before that, it'd be really hard to identify a body that had been in water for too long.
Yeah.
Now today we have all sorts of, like, you can tell what was the last thing. You can tell what the last thing this person ate was.
Yeah.
By the way that we do body autopsies now.
All bits. Here's another thing. Not only were they found in water and they could potentially have drifted, they were all found in a time of the year. Again, we're talking about the northern, either Midwest or the eastern colonial states. They were found in cold weather. They were intoxicated. Many of them were intoxicated. Even the first person we looked at, Patrick McNeil, he wasn't that intoxicated, though. I mean, they said he might have the equivalent of like 4 or 5 drinks, like 4 or 5 beers, which, depending on who you are, can intoxicate you. But for like a young, like 6 foot tall man, that's not like dropping over and fucking.
No, that's barely buzzing for either of the two people at this table.
But almost all of them died in the winter months. So they died near bodies of water, died in winter months, and they were intoxicated in some fashion. And they posit that young men, especially when they're intoxicated, do stupid shit. In much cruder words than what they said. So men are more likely to engage in risky behavior than women. And so they will, like, so what they theorize is like a lot of these men are just walking home. They're trying to take a shortcut, or they're trying to go through another place. They slip, they fall into the water. It's cold as fuck.
I mean, I have fallen in icy water before. Yes.
Yeah.
It takes your breath away.
Yeah, it literally can disable you. So that's a big thing. There's also a claim that some drugs were used against the victims, but the people that they did find drugs in, they couldn't determine if those were like accidental or recreational. Like, I think GHB was one of the drugs they were talking about, but apparently that can be taken recreation. Like, that's not something I really know about. But aside from the smiley face being a super popular symbol, graffiti is inconsistent. What's
I was going to say, what's the first, like, if you're walking by a dirty car, and, like, I remember us being stupid kids, what do you put on the back of a dirty car's window?
A penis? Or
a smiley face, or wash me. Like, those are the first three things. Now, we understand the smiley face is not the number one that you're going to draw in snow or anything.
It's big. It's big up there. But
I mean, everybody can make a smiley face.
Yeah. So the smiley face the graffiti was inconsistent. Some of the graffiti was much older, 10 plus years than the crime. So we're talking about like smiley faces that might have been drawn in the 80s. And then they find a body in like 2001. And they're like, oh, shit.
No, I mean, also think about, I hate to say this, during this time period, you also had the comeback of the Watchmen movie in the early O's. You had the Watchmen series. The Watchmen comic has never really... Okay, it's not the most popular, but I think most actual comic book nerds know what that is. So what was a nerdy graffiti artist going to try to do?
Make a smiley face.
Make a smiley face. I mean, it's also the shit happens t-shirt.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When it comes to the smiley face graffiti, it was inconsistent in a way of, like, all the art styles were different. So you might have one that's, like, pristine. You might have one that's just, like...
Slapdash.
Slapdash. You might have... They might be different colors. They might be different proportions. There's no real consistency. And you might say, well, it's supposed to be a gang. But if it's a gang, if you look at how gangs operate...
Their mark is very specific.
Yeah, they are very particular about how they do things. If you look at any sort of like street gangs from the 80s and 90s, all the shit they do is very specific. And if you don't do it that way...
You're in trouble.
You're in trouble, yeah. So if we're talking about a gang here... We're talking about a very sloppy gang.
There's some sloppy boys.
There's some sloppy boys here. They're just killing white people. I don't know. I'm going to shut up now.
No.
Actually, I'm not going to shut up.
God.
But here's the biggest kicker, though. Not all crime scenes had a smiley face. So we're in a situation where not all people were drowned, as the case of Patrick, and at least one other was determined a homicide, but most were considered drownings. You had the place where the body is found, likely not where they died. You have the idea, the happenstance of the smiley faces, it's not consistent. Some places didn't have it. And another big nail in the coffin is the fact that, like, when you're talking about bodies found in drainage ditches, like we were talking earlier, like if someone like had died at the maze and someone found the body and there happened to be a smiley face there, it was like, well, of course, because if you go to the maze right now, it's fucking covered in graffiti because kids go out there every day,
tag it.
Like, I used to run near there because it's on a levee. And I would just see people tagging there, and they would, like 14-year-old kids would like sit there and try and hide. I'm like, dude, I was doing that at your age too, so I don't care.
Hold the can at a 45.
It's like me about to go down there. It's like, hold up. Let me.
God damn it, y'all.
Let me fucking show you how to do it. No, I didn't do that. That's a joke.
Chris did not aid. Hold on. The creators of this podcast have never, nor shall they ever aid in the delinquency of a minor upon tagging any public structure.
But yeah, despite the pedigree of the investigators and some of the people that buy into it, it seems to me like this isn't a real thing. It sounds like...
She agrees with you. The baby agrees with you.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Something here going forward, Chris, and future Chris can edit it out if he can. She is getting more and more vocal.
Yeah, I can tell.
And her volume is whatever the hell she wants it to be at the moment.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm not hating. But yeah, it feels to me a lot of this is like there is like you see a pattern and you try to attribute something to it. And I know that like at least Kevin Gannon was somewhat somewhat involved in Patrick McNeil's investigation, and he was one of the few people. He worked as a detective on the New York Police Department, and he was one of the only ones that's like, this seems sussy-wussy. But to turn that into like a group of like gang of killers that is like killing white people, in his words, because they're jealous. It seems like you're putting together pieces of a theory that you think is like you're making a theory and then you're trying to find pieces that fit. And like that is something we do a lot of the time. I mean, there's some other instances that I found. The Manchester Pusher in Manchester is apparently a serial killer that goes around pushing people into the canals. But like when you look at the canals in Manchester, they're not built for safety. So it could have been anything from like accidental stuff to like
drunk or two people got into a fight.
Yeah, it could have been a multitude of things. People just fall in and drown. And
look, if you even look at all the narrowboat canals that are still in England that people like vacation on and like live in their own little boat tiny houses now, there's no fucking handrails anywhere. Like the amount of shit that is not safe, it's almost American.
Yeah. That reminds me of like when one of our friends, we're not going to name him on the podcast, used to live in a riverboat here. Mm-hmm. And it was just a floating pier. Like this was back when the river was like high. Mm-hmm. And it was just a floating pier. I think it was like styrofoam.
It's one of those, the top layer was wood planking underneath it. You had like some of those like 12-inch thick blocks of styrofoam that were like 6 feet long every so often. Better than the plastic ones that feel like you're walking on a milk jug that have a little bit of a flex and bounce because it's just like on rollers connected to piers.
Even still, you're walking on that and you're staying dead in the middle of that motherfucker because if it flips, especially when the river is high, that current's going to fucking...
You're going to... Well, you might not necessarily die, but you're going to go for a minute.
Yeah. So yeah, that was fun doing that, but...
as long as you don't get down to the locks.
There's also the Salish Sea feet incidences. So in Canada, there were feet.
Oh yeah, it's feet washing up on the shore.
And people were like, oh, it must have been a serial killer. It's still kind of grim. Apparently, people would be jumping into the sea to...
unalive.
Yeah, and the way nature works, the magic of nature is like, all the body would be redistributed to the sea, except for the feet, because they were insulated in some nice pair of Air Jordans. And then they would wash up on the sea. I
mean, the thing you got to remember about most tennis shoes is they're like 90% foam.
Yeah.
Not joking. Like what is on my feet right now, if it was not for the rest of me on it, would float in water.
So that my whole read on this is just, it's an urban legend born out of people's desire to kind of like connect dots that really aren't there. It's kind of like our pattern-seeking behavior going haywire.
Is this almost like a true crime pareidoia?
Almost,
like you want it to be there so bad.
Yeah. Like I'm not gonna disparage. I'm not going to disparage Kevin Gannon or Duarte for anything because I don't know the extent of their reasoning.
Also, having Ganondorf because their names together are still making me think Ganondorf. Yeah. Having Gannon on your bad side or being on Gannon's bad side is a terrible idea.
But they might have started this out like with like a genuine intention. Or they might still have a genuine intention. I think the biggest problem with this is that it can... like, their investigations might have opened up old wounds for people. Mm. So, you know, you go in and you're investigating and you're talking to families of the victims, and you're like, oh, well, they didn't actually drown. They were murdered or something like that.
If you came back 5 years later after my family member I thought drowned, like that's, oh my God. And I might start like being kind of, I was like, oh no, we think they might have been murdered. The fuck, man?
Yeah, that's again, it's opening an old wound. And I think there's like some unintentional problems there. But yeah, that's really all I have to say on this one. So my sources...
And that's all I have to say about that.
Well, the thing is, it's like, all I can really say is, like, I think that, like, it's an interesting pet theory, but with all true crime, it has problematic elements that...
It feels like we went from, at the very beginning, sounding like a actual true crime, like, oh my God, we're doing an actual true crime episode, to a creepypasta by the end of this very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it does kind of read as a creepypasta, really. Like, when you actually, like, zoom out and look at it, it feels like a creepypasta. It's like you read the Russian sleep experiment, you might, like, if you've never heard of creepypastas and you first read something like that, like, you know, in 2004, and you're just finding it on the internet, you're like, wow, this sounds real. And then, but when you look back, you're like, oh, the Russian sleep experiment, this sounds like a horror movie.
The Russian sleep experiment is real for the first 5 paragraphs. Like,
yeah.
Like, until we get into we all would exist within your mind at all times. You sleep to keep us away. It's like, okay, like, if like a dude that you came, like, if it wasn't for the grotesqueness of that story.
Yeah.
Like, just a dude you've kept awake for that long starts saying, like, you just literally drove a man insane. That's kind of realistic. The seeing how long you can keep someone awake with a gas or something, that's something we probably actually done. I mean, like, to be fair, the Nazis were giving their soldiers meth at the end of the war.
Oh my God.
Oh no, that's another fun obscura knowledge that some people don't know is that
what, isn't there like theories that Hitler was on meth?
No, he was on speed, which is pretty much meth.
Yeah, because I remember those video. I think it was the Olympics video.
They gave him basically speed for his. He probably had Crohn's disease. In all honesty, he probably had the irritable bowel syndrome.
I just know that like there's that one video of him like watching like a sports event and he's jumping around. It's like, you are on something. So.
Well, to be fair, he switched to being a vegetarian because of his gastro problems, which I hate. It sounds mean when you go, "Hey, always remember Hitler was a vegetarian." Don't nobody take that way, but no, that he was on so many drugs,
cocktails.
But that is so far from where we started here.
Yeah,
so let's round it back in because
well,
like we said, it started out like it started out kind of real, ended like a creepypasta. I'm kind of with you. I don't know if this is real or not. There's people who have been murdered, but again, it seems like someone's stretching.
Yeah. It's like someone has the puzzle and then they're looking for the pieces to fit the puzzle. But anyway, my sources were thought.is, the smiley face killer theory connects 40 college students' death, Center for Homicide Research drowning the smiley face killer theory, Psychology Today, 14 men, link or no link, 14 dead men, link or no link. Wikipedia, smiley face killers. A&E, are the smiley face killers real? Positively Pittsburgh, smiley face killer, fact or fiction? Fox 26, smiley face killers, what the experts say about the theory. Fordham Observer, Fordham murder case resurfaces after 22 years. Also, the channel Shrouded Hand and Lazy Masquerade. Thank you for listening. This is Backwoods Obscura. We release every Tuesday. We are on Blue Sky and Facebook for the moment. I'm trying to post, I swear, but we are also Team Bonus Action.
Well, also, we're currently still on TikTok.
We're still on TikTok, although by the time this one comes out,
it might be gone. It might not.
Might not. We'll see.
Well, might not. Definitely gonna not move over to
Red Note or
anything
Instagram
like that.
Reels or whatever.
Yeah, I don't want to give Meta too much more than we have. But we're also Team Bonus Action. You can find Team Bonus Action at teambonusaction.com on on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads as Team Bonus Action. You can find us there. We are a tabletop group. Currently, I don't know what our charity is because the charity clerics have not gotten back to me on that. We might be doing for the next 3 months the Trevor Project. So if you can support us, please do.
They do need the money.
And if we're not currently partnered with them, with the next time you hear this, the Trevor Project is still a worthy cause to give money to. That's everything. I was going to say before we started to sign off, 12 Dead Men sounds like a good movie title for like a suspense movie.
Yeah, it sounds like a suspense like Western.
It almost sounds like, or it sounds like a courtroom drama.
Yeah.
And it might be 12 defendants.
Right. Anyway, y'all have a good night or day or whatever time it is there.
And don't drink and jump in icy water.
Yeah, that's bad for you.
Wow.